You are watching the Fayetteville Government Channel. Up next, full coverage of the latest City of Fayetteville ward meeting. Ward meetings are held at various times by City Council members to interact with and receive feedback from the residents of their ward.
All right, I'm going to welcome you to our Ward 1 meeting. Sorry that we're having kind of yucky weather tonight, so our numbers may be limited, but we're delighted that you are here. Thank you so much. And first of all, we're going to hear from our Jeremy Pate, who's going to talk to us about a couple of different things. And then, of course, we'll have plenty of time for questions and answers later. Jeremy's going to talk to us about the Kessler-Cato zoning proposal, as well as the parking deck progress and timeline. Two issues that everyone in Fayetteville is excited to know about. And so be sure if you have questions, Jeremy will help you with those. Thanks, Jeremy.
Do we need to use the microphone?
It doesn't work. The microphones are strictly for the camera. We don't have any for the room.
Well, for people at home that might be watching us.
They can use the microphone. Yeah.
What?
Jeremy, if you can use either that microphone or this microphone, then the people at home will, that one would probably be easier right there. Whatever. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for coming. My name is Jeremy Pate. I'm the Director of Development Services for the city. And as Adele mentioned, I'm going to talk to you about a couple of different items. One is a zoning proposal that's before the City Council. It was first heard last night, and in 2 weeks it'll be heard for a second time. What this is a request to rezone a piece of property in southwest Fayetteville. The city annexed and approved a almost 1,000-acre project called South Pass back in 2008. It was a public-private venture where a developer was constructing a mixed-use project and agreed to donate 200 acres to the city of Fayetteville for a regional park. And it's something that we had put out a request for proposals a few years prior to solicit essentially interest for someone to donate that land and assist us with development of a regional park. This project came through, was approved by the City Council after a lot of discussion. It's a very big project. Well, anything on 900 to 1,000 acres is going to be a big project, but this had several thousand apartments and single-family dwelling units and commercial, basically a whole new downtown area to serve that region of the city. The recession hit not very long after that, and so that project has never come to fruition. It went back into the bank's hands. It went into foreclosure, and so the developer was no longer involved. And what was left over was essentially about 900 acres that the bank owned, Chambers Bank. We approached Chambers Bank in about 2009 at some point and said, hey, would you make good on this donation that the developer is going to do? They came through with that and donated the full 200 acres at no cost to the city, and that was something that we owned from that time forward, and we've been planning for our regional park. The balance of the project, if you heard or read about in the papers, we recently purchased or acquired about 376 acres, known as Mount Kessler. So that's where this area is, around Mount Kessler. West of Cato Springs Road, kind of south of south and west of I-49, and so we acquired that in a land transaction with Chambers Bank and a grant from the Walton Family Foundation that assisted us. And so the city now owns, out of that original 900 plus acres, the city owns about 630 acres now out there, and Chambers Bank owns about 250. So that's kind of the background for this zoning request. All of that property is still under the currently approved and active PZD, but we all know, they know that project's not going to happen. The same developers aren't even involved. They have what's called entitlement rights to develop it, so they can develop it just as it's approved, but that's not really necessarily exactly the project that they want. And obviously on the portions that we've acquired now, which we're intending to preserve as parkland, we don't want future development on that either. So the request was twofold. One, for the 630 acres that the city owned, we requested to rezone that to institutional, which is the zoning district that we use for all of the parks and trails within the city. And that was approved last night by the City Council, so that 630 acres got rezoned to institutional. And then the second part was Chambers Bank came forward with a request at the same time to rezone their property, their 258 remaining acres, into 3 different zoning districts. The first is called Urban Thoroughfare. It's what's called a form-based zoning district, meaning the density and the style of development is much more like what you see in downtown or in Dixon Street or places of that nature, where the form of the development is much more important than the uses within that area. So it allows for mixture uses. So that area, if it's rezoned, could be developed for commercial, office, residential, all sorts of uses in that area. And it's concentrated really around the same area that the former project had as their most dense and intense area, which is the flattest area that they own. Further into the property, the second request was to rezone a portion of that to what's called community services. Very much like Urban Thoroughfare, just a little less dense. It doesn't have as many of the intensity of uses as Urban Thoroughfare does, which is along the state highway and the interstate. And then thirdly, further into the property, they're requesting what's called neighborhood conservation, which is essentially a single-family zoning district, a little higher density than probably most of the neighborhoods that we live in, but very similar to like Washington Willow, Walker Park area is that neighborhood conservation is primarily the zoning in Walker Park area, and so that'd be very similar to that type of development style. So that was the request. It was left on the first reading, I believe, last night at the City Council meeting to try to get some just public knowledge about what's being requested out there. And so this is one of those opportunities to let you all know, and I'm happy to kind of take any questions or anything like that. So.
Do we have any questions for Jeremy at this time?
Aubrey Shepherd. Most of you live fairly close, and you're aware of what neighborhood conservation creates.
Aubrey, can you speak up a little bit? We can't hear you.
I'm sorry. Neighborhood conservation zoning on land such as this they're talking about. It's new land, it's never been developed. And in South Fayetteville, their old houses are being removed, and then multiple story, or at least 2-story houses are being built, and they're completely covering the lots with red dirt. Then they try to make a small place that you can have a flower bed, something you can call a rain garden, but the fact is that infill of that sort is eliminating access to the natural soil and eliminates the ability of the groundwater to actually soak in to the groundwater flows. And we have examples of that at MLK and East Avenue, for instance. And the way the houses are built, they do not allow you to have any real green space. The big trees that grow along the property lines, you can see them right down this street, South College, where they clear a lot, fill it completely with these new buildings, and that means the roots of the trees along the property line are killed on that side, or removed, actually cut. So it's a very bad, risky zoning to put as many as 10 houses per acre. And it's much less efficient than apartment buildings, actually, because you've got all these expensive walls. So these houses are being sold for 3 times what the old houses would be worth if they were in good shape and still sitting there. And doing this on that beautiful land at what we call Judge Cummings' property, those of you who've lived here a long time, would be a very bad way to zone it, I think. You need to leave as much of that land natural as possible. Save as many trees as possible. The water that runs off the South Pass property, we call it in more recent, the last 8 years or something, would increase flooding if it's zoned that way, and houses are allowed to be built in such a way that they don't allow the water to soak in and flow in natural channels down to the stream. It's the Cato Springs branch where that water goes, and that joins the town branch by the, the Salvation Army, it actually joins town branch at, or the upper west arm of the town branch at the Great House Park. And Great House Park in recent years has been totally underwater. And you've got to envision what's going to continue to happen downstream from this new development if it's not done with low impact considerations. And there's no way that neighborhood conservation will allow that. Thank you.
So Aubrey, is there something you wanted us to address, or you're not pleased with this this designation? Is that?
I think it should be at least quarter acre lots, but that would be green here.
So I think the response to that would be certainly RSF4, which is our standard subdivision quarter acre lot. A lot of West Fayetteville has been developed. I think we see definitely problems with that as well, just from transportation choices. Quarter acre lots oftentimes are so expensive that it really prices out affordable housing. Not that some of the lots down here are very affordable housing. I think a lot of the issues that you're trying to address are because we're in a lot of old infrastructure areas and there's infill happening, and we as a city see that as well, particularly drainage concerns, sidewalks, things of that nature, where lots are being split, and we certainly are encouraging the infill, but it's got to be appropriate. And so that scale is certainly an issue that we are trying to address, particularly in our older neighborhoods. In the newer neighborhoods, I think that we have enough ordinances in place with they're encouraging drainage criteria manual that we just went through the Planning Commission with. We're bringing to the council that provides incentives for low impact development. It gives opportunities for reducing detention by doing some of those kinds of things, but it also requires you to provide those drainage improvements up front before a single house is even being built. So a lot of the problems we have in Walker Park, along Town Branch, along Cato Springs Branch, is that when those neighborhoods were developed, it was in the early 1900s, there were no drainage manual, there was no drainage criteria, there was no stormwater. Most of the streets don't even have stormwater pipes underneath them, so anything that's built on those lots has an impact. If you can imagine, if 10 square feet is then of grass is then covered by 10 square feet of concrete, it's going to have an impact on all sides. So that's certainly something we're trying to keep an eye on as we look at infill development particularly those developed areas.
And Aubrey, we will be discussing this at the Environmental Action Committee meeting on Monday. This project will drain into my backyard, so I'm watching it very closely as well.
Thank you. Any questions? Uh-huh. Excuse me, could you stand up?
Larry, can you come to the microphone so the people watching at home can hear?
That's a good question. You never know. Zoning is not related to development whatsoever. All it does is tells you what you could do with your property, and it basically tells you what the maximum density, how big or small the lots can be, the uses that can happen on the property. And then this particular case, because they're considered form-based codes, it also tells you the form in which the property can develop. However, there's not a development plan attached to it. There's not a guarantee that there's a certain kind of business or a certain kind of house that will come in. It's really just more of an idea of what could happen there. certainly. Yep. Yep. And I think that's a very important point. Our
Jeremy, for the
Sorry?
people at home, could you repeat
Oh,
what
sure.
he said?
So the statement was that we hope that the drainage of Cato Springs Branch and the flooding that takes place now is taken into account when future development occurs. And I just want to reiterate the drainage criteria manual that we have currently, which basically it's a manual that dictates how development can occur and how much drainage is allowed off your property, essentially. It's really situated, it was designed for large storm events, 100-year floods, which we don't see very often. Oftentimes, floods that really impact us are like the 1-inch rainfall, the 2-inch rainfall that we see every few years. And so this new drainage criteria manual starts to take into account those much smaller events, and so we hope to see any development on those properties will have to comply with this as long as it's adopted. And so we hope to see a marked improvement in particularly those low storm events. So at a rainfall like this, if this happened, if it's a heavy rainfall for the next day, but it doesn't approach a 50-year storm, it's still going to have an impact, a very real and tangible impact. Sure. Yep.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other questions related to this zoning? Yes.
James Walters, you mentioned the first zoning request was regional
The first zoning I mentioned was called institutional, and that's where the parks are located. So we own 630 acres out there, so all the city land is the institutional. Sure, it simply allows for open space. It allows for public facilities. So if a fire station or a police station, substation, things of that nature, we're going to locate out there, then that's what that type of zoning generally allows. That's what all of our parks and all of our city property really within the city is zoned institutional type use. Sure.
Any other questions? Okay, now we'd like for Jeremy to talk to us a little bit about the parking deck progress and timeline.
All right, so as many of you know, the city is constructing a parking deck in our downtown area. This will be located at the northwest corner of Spring and School, which is right behind the Walton Arts Center. It's to serve not only the Walton Arts Center. A lot of people call it the Walton Arts Center parking deck. It's really not just to serve the Walton Arts Center. Frankly, we prefer patrons to maybe park in the deck once it's constructed, but then visit Dixon Street, all the establishments, the restaurants, spend money that produces sales tax, and then go to a show if you happen to be doing that. But it's not just for the Walton Arts Center. Back in 2012, the City Council selected this site, and we've been under design process to design the parking deck. It's a 3.5, 4-level parking deck, however you want to see it. There's a portion of it that's underground, and there's a portion of it that's at a 4th level, but it's mainly, when you look at it, it looks like a 3-level parking deck. It contains about 245 parking spots. I can't remember how many bicycle racks we have in it, but several on each level. Primarily at the ground levels where you can access the grade. The grade is different. If you think about that site kind of by high roller, it changes pretty dramatically in topography. So on one level at School Street, you'll enter one level, and back down on Spring Street, you'll enter a different level. So you'll actually be entering the parking deck from 2 different levels. It actually really assists with circulation. It allows people to park in different places, and it seems like there's more parking in a parking deck when you do that. So we gain the benefit of that site. Where we are in process right now, that's fully designed. We have advertised and approved a contract actually last night for the first phase of construction. City Council approved a little under $450,000 to do 3 things. The first is to mobilize onto the site. So what the contractors do when they do that is they show up with their job trailers, their equipment, their erosion control. They put up all of their silt fencing, their construction cones and barriers, things like that, and that's the first part of it. The second phase is that that will happen the first week of August, so we're not very far from that at all, just a couple weeks. The second week of August, we will begin to demolish the Walton Arts Center Administrative Office Building, which is called Just Off Center. It's right there behind the Walton Arts Center. It's an old red brick building. And so we'll begin demolishing that. That will take about 10 days because we're separating and recycling the materials that are recyclable out of that building. So that will take about 10 days to do that. And then once that's complete, we will begin excavation. It'll be pretty significant excavation. As I mentioned, part of the deck is underground, and there's also a basement to some of the office building. And so we'll be beginning that excavation work, which takes about 70 to 80 days, I think, is what's in the contract to construct. And so really by the end of the year, you'll start to see concrete and steel rising out of the ground on that site. And so it's very exciting. What we have left to do, quite a few things will come before the council. We'll have an agreement with AEP to place all the lines underground along School and primarily along Spring as well. And so we'll have the overhead power lines will be going underground. Secondly, we'll have we actually approved last night an agreement with the gas company to relocate their lines out of the way for the parking deck. We will also have a new item, the bids for the rest of the project, which is more in the $7 to $8 million instead of $450,000. Those will go out for advertisement to solicit bids from contractors about I think it's July the 21st, and it'll take 2 or 3 weeks of accepting bids for that project. And we'll open those bids and select the lowest qualified bidder for the project, and at that point in time, we'll know exactly what the full cost is going to be for the project. We'll then take that to the City Council for their consideration and approval, and once we're able to approve that, we'll have the rest of the contract approved and begin the rest of that piece of construction. So this is about a 10 or 11 month construction process. We decided to break it into 2 phases so we can get a jump start on the good weather this summer, and that way we get part of this excavation done during what's usually the dry months of July or August, September, October, before we really get into kind of winter weather. So hopefully we'll have a lot of that complete before we get to that point. So hopefully by this time next summer, you'll be able to drive into a brand new parking garage. It also contains 3 liner buildings, one on the south side, one on the east side, and one on the north side. The one on the north side is primarily dedicated to Walton Arts Center users, the office building, replacing their office building and providing an expansion for them for their back-of-house facilities. And that will relate to their construction of an expansion. You'll see construction on the Walton Arts Center block for the next probably 3 years, honestly, from our project and from a couple phases of their project will be occurring. So that's a lot of things going on in that block, an important piece of cultural and entertainment area of our city. So happy to take any questions on that too.
Do we have any questions regarding the project?
Huh?
I remember there was kind of some questions about there might be a lot of public art potentially integrated into the walls of this structure, because I don't know how much flat space is just going to be flat concrete, or if the exterior is some kind of a texture to help graffiti issues from happening, and/or if there's space just to put some public art on the wall.
Sure, we've talked internally about that, and what we've done is let the interior spaces, I think, would be prime for something like that once they're complete, because like you mentioned, there will be a lot of concrete, just walls, and there's some great examples across the country of what you can do, color coordinate each floor with different types of art, or even utilize a theme for each floor. Lots of different opportunities that I think we could look at in the future for that. The exterior is primarily covered with either building facade, so glass of the building, a green screen, or a system of modular metal panels, 90 degrees, that are part of the covering for the parking garage. There's very little exposed concrete. There are a few portions that we've kind of set aside as a potential, primarily at the southeast corner. We've talked about that a little bit for a possible, it'd be southeast corner of the the deck, northwest corner of the intersection, but right there at the corner, two liner buildings meet, and underneath, exactly. So there's a potential opportunity there for display space. We've added some windows and some things there to try to break up that large concrete facade at the pedestrian level, but there's still some space, I think, there for, particularly because it's at a corner, it could really attract attention there. So.
Money is for that art, or is that part of the budget, or we have
It's
to do that
that would have to be separate. That's correct. Yep,
project?
that's correct.
Now, Jeremy, would that be included, or is there any art included in part of the NEA grant that we got for that stretch of street? Yes, it's on the NEA
Yeah. So
corridor.
what they're talking about, there's the city got a grant for design work along School Street from Dixon Street all the way to the library, and so that project wraps up in about a month. It's basically a concept proposal to integrate art and stormwater design into a better pedestrian experience along School Avenue that connects Dixon Street and the Walton Arts Center to the library, two major cultural institutions. And so part of that design incorporates some artwork. None of the construction is funded by this grant. It's prohibited from being funded actually by the grant. But I know that Matthew Petty, one of our council members who's worked on that quite a bit, and we actually met out there today in the Walton Arts Center to talk about how we could possibly incorporate that in future projects, and be looking for a proposal coming forward from the city for that as well.
And also on that site is the Porter Produce Building, which has been of great interest to the Fayetteville Forward Economic Accountability Council. It is the building that's located at the corner of West and Spring. It was built between 1904 and 1908 and has significant ties to the agricultural history of our region. Right now it's being used as a boarded up storage facility for the Walton Arts Center, and we'd really like to see a higher and better use of that facility. So thanks to the hard work of the mayor and the Economic Accountability Council, we were able to negotiate that, saving that building into the renewed lease agreement with the Walton Arts Center, and not just saving the building, but also committing to finding a higher and better use for it than just being a boarded-up building. And so we're hoping that there will be an art component to that. The local foods group has expressed interest in having it as a winter farmers market. The Historic and Heritage Resources Group is looking at maybe making it a museum on the history of Fayetteville. So there's a lot of ideas and opportunities there, but it was really heartening to see that the Walton Arts Center and the Walton Foundation are interested in partnering on that project.
Are there any other questions? Thank you, Jeremy. Appreciate your being here so much. Okay, Matt Mihalovich, come and speak with us about our wonderful new Walton Family Foundation grant. We're so excited. Talk to us about it.
Okay, great. Yeah, thanks for having me. My name's Matt Mihalovich.
Mr. Trails.
Mr. Trails.
Mr. Trails.
Thanks, Adele. I'm the Trails Coordinator for the City of Fayetteville. We're up to about 26 miles of trails now. You may have seen some of our new trail expansions just recently opened in this spring. Up north of the mall, there's the Clear Creek Trail, which is a really spectacular scenery of a trail. If you haven't gone up there, highly recommended. It connects up to Lake Fayetteville and goes underneath 71B. There's actually no road crossings with that one. It goes underneath the bridges. Real nice section of trail. And then also coming back down this way, the MLK extension of Frisco Trail under through the tunnel and back around, tying into Walker Park. That project has really opened up our ability to connect more of the south part of town with trails, and there's some great flat corridors along streams that we plan to utilize to build the trails. It's all been on the master plan. We're just working our way down here. So I brought a map here. Real push here. So this is the Frisco Trail coming into Walker Park. The big push is to connect up to the regional park as well. So we're working our way in phases down through Walker Park, south of 15th Street. There's a section of trail currently under construction, actually over by between 71B, if you know where Mama Dean's was. From there, you'll see some construction, and it's heading back over to Great House Springs Park. That's actually going to be finished in about a month to maybe a month and a half, depending on weather. And then these other purple sections will continue this to make a loop up to what we call the Chalegui Trail, which that trail means Cherokee Trail. It's actually part of the Trail of Tears. It follows along an old rail line. And that's finished also over to Razorback Road by Chick-fil-A. Everyone knows where Chick-fil-A is, so I use that. So that's why it's red on this map, creating this nice loop. And that is what we just recently found out, big news, that the Walton Family Foundation is going to provide $815,000 for this construction of these trails. It'll be matched by city funds. It will be built by our city crews as well. So, and they do a great job building those trails. In addition, coming on down to the regional park is following the Cato Springs branch, this green line, and the Walton Family Foundation has helped us fund a design to hire an engineer consultant to help us design this. It's got some complicated design situations because we do go across I-49, and that's involved permitting, also some bridges and different features involved with that project. So we're going to start design and hope to have it ready for construction in 2016. So it'll take about a year to design it, but then we'll get going on that one. Brings it right into the regional park. Also, future connections for the west side of town will be the Rupel Road improvements, which will include a trail along the west side of that road that'll bring it all the way down to MLK, and that's right about where the smokehouse is where that comes in. And then we're proposing a trail along the south side of MLK to come back toward I-49. That would be in front of Lowe's and Walmart there, so connecting some good destinations. And then the Highway Department, or HTD, is working on designs for that interchange, and we want to have them included, and the City Council supported, including bicycle facilities within their improvements on that interchange. So that'll bring it right back over to the Chalagi Trail. And then as well, we're looking at an extension of the Shiloh Trail that comes on into the regional park also. So it's going to have lots of options for some great trails. Just really excited to get this financial contribution to our efforts. We were already planning to do these trails, so this is going to accelerate the construction, and it also is going to enable us to really make them world-class trails, which will include lighting as well along the trails. So I guess at that point I can just answer any questions that you might have. Yeah, hey, Morgan. 2014 will be basically from city funds. City funds are $1.5 million a year for trails. That's been pretty steady. It hasn't really increased. We've been keeping it right about $1.5 million. That funds the trail crew, the construction crew that builds the trails, and then also all the materials involved with building the trails. Yeah, and I don't know where those numbers are, but we did get grant funding for the Frisco Trail extension, for example, the one under MLK. That was funded by the Walton Family Foundation as well. That was $1.2 million for that. So, yeah. Well, once we recognize the revenue, it goes in there, but we'd have to talk to probably Paul Becker on that to see. But in general, that's where it's been. CIP's been $1.5 million for trails over the past several years, and that $600,000 doesn't sound right either, because we didn't have a year that it was just $600,000. There's a lot of accounting that goes, and once we get grants, it recognizes it goes into our accounts, but yet that wasn't from taxpayer dollars, it was from that grant money, so you got to pull it apart. Okay, sure.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Yeah, come on. Sure. Yeah, thank you for those questions. Do you want me to repeat those questions? Okay. The questions are about the riparian zone along Town Branch related to the trail construction and the proximity to it, tree removal, also looking at the east side of 71B, how we're going into there, when that construction will happen, and also how we plan to cross 15th Street just on the south side of Walker Park. So, yeah, I will tell you that the trail does comply with our streamside protection ordinance. We do go underneath 71B, and that's probably where you're talking about. And those are areas that it's kind of a different situation because of the safety element of keeping people from having to cross that busy road. There is a little bit of give and take because we do need to get down and under that bridge. But we come back out on both sides quickly as we can. There was a little bit of tree removal where the box culvert went in on the west side of the big gravel parking lot, Meredith. And that was just for that drainage structure that we had to put in. But that's outside of the streamside zone. But we do try to be very sensitive to that. The rest of the trail you'll see is all moved away from the creek. You can't even actually see the creek from the trail. Yeah, and if you walked it all the way back to Great House Park, yeah. So you'll see all that area, and there was no tree removal in that. So I mean, there are specific areas where we were really pinched because of the drainage situations, but otherwise we've, really tried to minimize any of that impact. Uh-huh. Well, no, we're actually able to pull away as well as we come out of the under that bridge. It's within 25 feet, but I mean, it's relatively close, but that's within the tolerance allowed by the ordinance. We have gotten easements from Ozark Steel for that, but the construction will stop right there on the east side for now, and then we'll start back up in probably a month or two, working our way from Walker Park back down into that area there. But then we'll be staying away as well from the creek, through there. And then the university acquired some property on further to the east, and we're working with them for the easements on that. And we're able to pull away from the creek through there as well. Yeah, 15th, that's a good question. We originally looked at going underneath. There is currently a tunnel under there. That's just existing. 2, it's a double cell. It's 8 foot tall, which is the minimum. And looking at the way we were going to have to come out on the south side, we're concerned about the riparian corridor in that situation, because we're going to have some tree removal and streamside protection, in that area that we would be in the zone. So now we're looking at actually doing a signalized crossing. We're right now working on a permit, requesting from Arkansas Highway and Transportation Department, who owns 15th Street, that is a State Highway 16. So that we have to get their approval to do another signal like what is on South School. There'd be that same exact design of a signal. So that's kind of what we're looking at, and not actually using that tunnel and just keeping the creek as is through there. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Great. Thank you. Yeah. And then we need to put lights in there, and I was thinking those lights would hang down even more, and so it has some challenges like that. I mean, I won't say if we can't do the signal, then we'll probably go back to looking at that, because it's a busy road, and we need to provide a safe crossing there for the trail, and to get people into the park. So it's kind of a plan B right now, but we're hoping that this signal, it does look like we meet the warrants and the counts and everything for the signal. So I think it should work out. It's where, yeah. Yeah, from the park, where like the horseshoe pits are, and then there's the baseball fields on their side. Well, that's that creek that's flowing through there. It's a little bridge that you cross. Spout Spring, I guess it's still called there, or Tanglewood. I don't know which one gets priority. Aubrey would know. He's not here. Oh, there he is. Combined flow. Okay, both. Okay. But yeah, and there's just a 8 by 10 double cell box culvert that 15th Street goes over right there, between the Salvation Army and that storage units on the south side. So, you don't really notice it. It's kind of grown up, but it's there. Yeah, we're looking at probably about 2 months. We're still kind of finalizing some easements and some permitting, but 2 months. So the crew is currently working up at Lake Fayetteville. Forgot to mention that, but they're doing a great project to pull people off, trail users off of that road on the north side by the dam or in the boat dock area. Right, currently it was shared, and we had some, just as the use is getting so popular up there, we felt like it was a good time to go ahead and separate that use. And so, but they're moving along really quickly on that project, and so then they'll be moving down here in a couple months. So we're looking at about 2 months. Yeah, go ahead. No, we are looking at the Cato Springs Trail utilizing some of that old embankment, and possibly the bridge. There's an old trestle bridge there. We haven't really talked to the university yet. They're the owners of that, and they have a road proposed somewhere in that area at some point, so we need to coordinate where that proximity of that road was going to be. But it would be cool to use that for sure if we can. That's a little bit south of Great House Park, where that. Not much, yeah. So the trail, it would just come up, and then I'm showing it following along there right now. It would be great to utilize that. And we have experience with fixing a trestle. If you've been on the Jalagee Trail by Hill Place Apartments, that's one that we just finished and put new decking on it and poured a concrete top on that bridge, and it's a really nice way to go and saved us from having to do, really we didn't have to go in the creek at all since that bridge had been there 100 years. And they have said for sure that the South School section, they're going to be putting buildings and different things along there. So that's why we went ahead and moved closer to the creek. And they donated all of that property for us. And it makes a nice place for the trail, too. So it was a good compromise, I think.
Okay, thank you, Matt.
Yeah,
We
okay.
appreciate you so much. Thank you. All right, and now we're going to hear from Sarah Marsh talking about the Main Street Fayetteville update as well as the Garland Stearman clearing.
Yes. Well, to start out, I've been working really hard on an economic development plan to revitalize our South School Business Corridor. And so I applied to the Arkansas Downtown Network to start a Main Street Fayetteville program, and we were accepted. So this is a great honor. Some other peer cities that have a Main Street program are Siloam Springs, which is undergoing a great renaissance. Rogers and Russellville have all been very successful. And so we'll be working in this network along with Eureka has joined. But we're going to be focusing, phase one is going to focus on South School Avenue from right where that trail crossing is that we were just talking about that is under construction south of 15th Street, and then extend all the way to the library. So that'll be a great corridor, building that pedestrian corridor from the south side to downtown and implementing our 2030 city plan and helping us create the superbly walkable environment that our citizens asked us to do. So what this is going to enable us to do is to provide a lot of services to business owners along that corridor. Through this program, they will have access to free architects, interior designers, and economic development consultants. So that will be available to any business owner in that corridor. And I want to be clear that this is still a voluntary program. No one is going to be forced to do anything. This is for people who want to improve their building or their business practices or their window displays. But we'll also be working to integrate a lot of the exciting new things that the city is doing, like the trail expansion and the new sidewalks that are coming next year to South School Avenue. And hopefully integrating more art into the streetscapes and building some gateways to our trail system. And then we'll also be hosting events to bring more people down to the area and get them spending money, having a great time, and building a South School Avenue that we all can love and be proud of. The board is comprised of a lot of great people in the community. There are 4 residents of Ward 1 that are serving on the board. Sonia Gutierrez, that is here tonight. Tanisha Gist, who is the director of our Yvonne Richardson Center. Jerry Bailey, who's usually here, but I don't see him tonight. And then Rob Sharp, a great local architect that we all know and love. So that's part of our steering committee with several other members. We meet on the third Wednesdays of the month at 5:30 at the new design school. And we are partnered with the Fayetteville Forward Historic and Heritage Resources Action Group. So our next steps is we're going to be reaching out and looking for nonprofit funding partnerships. And we've got a few administrative tasks that we need to complete, but then we will be inviting the Downtown Network to come and give a presentation to the City Council, and we'll be hosting a community input charrette so that everyone will have an opportunity to show us what their vision is for South School Avenue. And then we hope to follow that up with some workshops for business owners to help them be more effective and enable them to better utilize the services of this program. And then moving on, some of you may be aware that there was an unfortunate clearing of a natural area down on Garland Avenue at Sturman Street. Someone went in without permits and did some regrading and changed the drainage pattern, took out some large trees. And so I just wanted to let everyone know that our city staff is watching that very closely. And so we're, on it. We've made them go and clean up the street where they were tracking all sorts of debris down the street, install some temporary erosion and sedimentation control barriers, and extinguish all the illegal burn piles that they had going on. So we are watching that. They have not applied for any kind of a permit for redevelopment, and if they don't do that within a reasonable period of time, we will require that they go and reseed and stabilize the site to prevent any kind of runoff or erosion in that area. Other good news to report. I have talked to you before about our new energy improvement district here in the city of Fayetteville. This is part of the Property Assessed Clean Energy legislation that was passed by the legislature last year, and we formed the first energy improvement district here in the state. And so right now we are in the process of interviewing a great firm that we hope will be able to administer this project so that we can roll out some very low interest long-term loans to help property owners, industry, and residential as well to have access to low interest loans to make energy improvements, invest in renewable energy, and be more water efficient. So stay tuned, there's some exciting stuff coming up. Does anyone have any questions about these projects? Yes. I believe we have funded from, I'm sorry, the question was asking about what sidewalks we funded or that we'll be building in 2015 on South School Avenue. And I believe we funded all the way from MLK to, yeah, it's from MLK up to basically where it turns into Archibald Yale Boulevard, I believe. Do you know for sure? Oh, yes, 15th Street. I'm sorry. I meant 15th Street all the way down. And then the mayor and I are looking for funding opportunities to rebuild the intersection at 15th and South School because of all the semi-trucks that are trying to access our commerce district and getting caught in that intersection. So that is definitely on the agenda and the to-do list to rebuild that.
Any other questions, comments? Great.
Thanks.
Thanks. Thanks, Sarah.
I've been asking a lot of questions about that. I'm not on the transportation committee, so I'm kind of limited in what I can do there. But the barrier there right now is the railroad crossing is too close to the intersection. And in order to improve that intersection, we need to put the crossing gates, which is, I believe, about a $200,000 expenditure. We do have money and funds to rebuild the intersection, but we're trying to figure out that railroad crossing before we can go forward. But the new development that is going on, that will be going in at 15th and Razorback, where that empty lot is, they will be paying into a fund, I believe, to help, to put in reserve to eventually rebuild that intersection. I don't know if we're going to do a lighter, but I'm hoping for a roundabout. But we'll see. Jeremy, do you have any?
Which intersection is it? Jeremy, can you speak to that?
So yeah, just a quick update. Sarah is exactly right. Adding a signal there creates a stacking issue across the railroad, and so we would have to, it's actually almost $300,000 expense to put the gates in. We've actually submitted some concepts to the highway department with a roundabout and pedestrian improvements along all four sides of the intersection. We're simply waiting some comments back from them. We don't want to go into any kind of design process if they're just going to say no. So, but that would be something we would certainly look at to help improve that entire intersection. So.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? All right, any other concerns? This is a time when you can talk with us about any concerns you have. Could you come to the microphone, please? Your name is?
I'm Richard Russell,
Uh-huh.
and should I be speaking to the camera?
No, that's fine, just speak
Okay.
right there.
I and some other people from our general neighborhood have come to discuss a few things that are concerns to us. I live at 401 South College. That's not too far from here. Just back up South College where it intersects with 4th Street. And my other colleagues are nearby neighbors. What we're experiencing in our little crossroads is people who have turned off their utilities and continue to live in the house. When I first brought it up with someone on staff over at the city, they go, oh, the comment was, oh, they've gone off the grid. And the point I was making to him was, well, it's not exactly utopian like that. It's a little earthier, shall we say. So, also there are dogs, 5 big pit bull cross dogs in this yard, and they're getting out a lot. People in evidence all day and all night, sitting in chairs in the yard, lots and lots of things for sale, debris, this and that. And so we're feeling a little bit insecure. Last year, you might recall, there was a lady stabbed to death down in this neighborhood, about a block or so from where I live. So what we're asking is there any mechanism to identify situations where people have withdrawn from being signed up for utilities but continue to live in the house? We have found out that since we started asking, some utilities have been restarted, but we know that some of the houses still don't have electricity.
So it's one house,
It's two.
2 houses.
2 houses. Yeah, and I can give you the information. She's got, Sarah has quite a bit of the information. The conversation has already started, but we just feel like that this is a kind of a forgotten or a loophole, an area that's not defined very well in terms of the city. Well, you can look at it as the city losing revenue from people who continue to take their trash out. I mean, that's been going on. And you have to ask questions about, are they using the sewers? We don't know. So we feel like it's sort of turning, it has the possibility of turning into a refugee camp. And really not that far from City Hall.
Well, Mr. Russell, the first thing I would say is I'm going to give you my card. And anytime you see anything of this nature, I would like for you to give me a call immediately, and I will begin working on that. I had not heard anything about it until this very moment, but I can understand your concern.
And I'd also like to invite you to come over to my backyard someday about noon and let you enjoy the smells and aromas that the animal control hasn't been, they have not seemed to find any problem.
Right.
It's not been identified as a problem.
I can certainly,
Very
I can
like-
certainly involve them as well.
And so my other colleagues, can speak as well. We don't want to browbeat you
Yeah,
here.
just, I'm Craig Crocker, I'm neighbor
And
of
your last name?
Crocker,
Crocker. Craig
neighbor of
Crocker.
Richards, that's right. And this has been a chronic, I'm a little bit surprised that this is a surprise, because this has been a chronic problem. I have, on occasion, over the years, I've been there for going on 5 years, have called the police about the problem. I don't even have to give them the address. I just say, South College, oh yeah, we know the house.
Have you called an alderman?
No, that's a good point. No, I guess I felt like the first point of contact would, thank you. First point of contact would be with the police. Now, this would be an occasion when there would be a fight or something that required immediate attention.
Sure, I can understand that.
Okay, but-
And, you know, if you do that first, but if you don't get immediate
Sure.
response.
Yeah. Thank
call
you.
me.
Thank you. Okay.
Call me.
Okay.
I will work on it, promise you. Any other, yes.
I live behind.
Could you come up to the mic, please, and your
sure.
name?
I'm Erica Wilhite. I heard that this is a known issue, and they actually were forced to put their house on the market. And my landlord has told me this information, that they were recently someone made an offer on the house, and they asked for $10,000 more. So they're holding. This is a known issue, and they're trying to get them out of the neighborhood, but they're not wanting to move, and so they are not selling the house. That's what I heard. I did call the police because the dogs busted into my backyard and attacked my elderly dog while my infant and my elderly mother-in-law were out there. It was a terrifying situation. All 5 of them got through my yard, and we called the police, and then we called animal control, and they came out, and they knew exactly who we were talking about, and they said, you know, they're really nice guys, but, you know, they really love those dogs, but I do
Thank
feel
you.
unsafe.
Thank you so much. I'm glad you all are here tonight, and we will work on it. We will certainly work on it. Any other concerns? All right, if there are no other concerns, we'll just bring this meeting to conclusion, and we'll meet in about 3 months. We'll let you know the exact date. It'll be about 3 months. Thank you so much for coming.